Imagine someone reaching the very end of a stone tunnel and, without knowing it, stopping just 1 centimeter away from an entire mine of diamonds. The air is pulsing. A shadow, however, slides along the edges as if it were breathing together with the seeker's heart. It is one of those moments when the world should finally open, but something invisible presses down on the shoulders, silent, ancient, painfully familiar. Have you felt this? Life about to turn in your favor, and suddenly, fears, guilt, doubts, and voices that do not even sound like yours start pulling you back. As if there were 2 selves. One moving forward, the other sabotaging. And then the question that cuts through everything appears. Why does the attack always come at the edge of victory? There is a hidden principle here, a psychic engineering that operates exactly at the border zones of destiny. Today, you are going to see the adversary that lives inside your own emotional field. And once you see it, nothing in your journey toward abundance will remain the same. We walk through a narrow corridor of light, where each step makes the ground tremble, as if announcing an inevitable transition. Ahead, a half-open door shines with the gold of a life that is finally starting to respond. But behind the seeker, a shadow places its hand on their shoulder, heavy like an old memory. It does not scream, it does not roar, it only whispers. And this whisper alone is enough to freeze any forward motion. It is always like this. The closer you get to the opening, the denser the air becomes, as if the threshold itself demanded a silent test. In this silence, intrusive thoughts rise like specters. This is not going to work. You don't deserve this. It is dangerous to grow. The door is still there, shining, but something inside locks you in place. This is where analytical psychology lifts its torch. Carl Gustav Jung describes the shadow as the set of rejected contents, denied emotions, unseen fears. It is not your enemy. It is the guardian of the old self, of the known zone, of the pattern that ensured your survival for years. And that is why it shows up exactly when a new level of life is calling. The shadow does not try to destroy you. It tries to protect you from an unknown that it never learned how to handle. This is why, right before every expansion, your inner voices get louder. They are not signs of error. They are signs of passage. Fritjof Capra's systemic physics sheds even more light on this mystery. In his vision of living systems, every organism resists sudden transformation because it is trying to preserve homeostasis. Systems, internal or external, defend the old structure until the new one becomes more coherent energetically. This means your own psycho-emotional field reacts to growth by trying to keep the previous stability. None of this is failure. It is natural dynamics. And when you understand this mechanism, fear stops being a monster and reveals itself as a force of cohesion. The first Hermetic law that touches this phenomenon is mentalism. The Kybalion states, "The universe is mental." What you think and feel is not born only on the surface of the mind. It is also born from the unconscious that thinks through images, resistances, and emotional impulses. The shadow is an old thought trying to stay alive. All it does is keep a story alive that you yourself wrote in the past. When the mind changes, the inner universe changes. And when the inner universe changes, the outer one responds. Now imagine a miner who gets 1 centimeter away from the diamonds. In the exact moment before discovery, his shadow comes close and whispers, "You don't know what to do with that much light." He believes it, drops his tool and walks back into the dark, convinced that he failed because of bad luck, not because of lack of vision. How many times have you done this without noticing? How many doors of light have you abandoned because the old version of you pulled you back at the last second? But the shadow does not want your failure. It wants your survival. This means that when it appears, you are not being punished. You are being tested. Tested to see if you are capable of crossing the portal without destroying the old part of you that fears the new. Tested to see if you are capable of carrying light without crushing your own inner structure. And here comes the question of consciousness. What exactly shows up in you when you are about to win? Which inner voice tries to convince you to retreat? Whose invisible hand is touching your shoulder in decisive moments? If you observe deeply, you will see that this presence is not an enemy. It is a mirror. And once you recognize the mirror, the possibility of integration is born. And if this knowledge is touching something in you, honor your own journey. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. When you do that, you teach the algorithm and the digital universe itself to deliver more wisdom to your path. For a moment, imagine an old mirror whose surface vibrates between light and shadow, as if two versions of you were fighting for the same reflection. On one side, the face illuminated by the vision of who you want to become. On the other, a dense silhouette trying to pull you back to what is familiar. It is as if your consciousness were divided between two worlds, and every step toward the future awakened a force of equal intensity pulling you back to the past. This tension is not a mistake. It is part of the very architecture of the human psyche. And when it is ignored, it becomes the adversary that many call bad luck or fate working against them, when in fact it is simply the fragmented self. Carl Gustav Jung describes the individuation process as the great inner work, the journey in which light and shadow stop fighting and start forming a single center. The real battle is never against something outside. It is against inner division. Jung shows that the psychological devil is not a being outside of you, but a psychic function that separates, fractures, opposes. It operates whenever one part of you wants to grow, while another fears losing control. This division lowers your vital energy, fuels unconscious sabotage, and creates a silent question. What if all this goes wrong? That question does not come to stop you. It comes to reveal what has not been integrated yet. Amit Goswami's quantum view expands this inner map by affirming that consciousness is the ground of being and that the world manifests through the conscious observer. In this perspective, inner duality is not only psychological, it affects the way reality collapses in front of you. When the mind is divided, the field it projects is also divided. The intention to move forward is modulated by the emotion that is afraid to move forward. And the outer reality reflects that paradox exactly, not as punishment, but as quantum coherence. Here, the Hermetic law of polarity reaches out its hand and clarifies. Every principle contains its opposite, and both are the two ends of the same essence. As the Kybalion says, opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. The inner adversary, therefore, is not the opposite of your light. It is your own light in a denser degree, not yet integrated. There is no real division. There is only vibration at different poles. When you change the degree, you change your destiny. Now visualize an ancient scale. On one plate, your desire to grow. On the other, the primal fear of losing the safety of the old self. The scale swings, creating the sensation of inner war. But as you begin to recognize the shadow as a legitimate part of your psyche, the scale starts to stabilize. The war that seemed spiritual is, in truth, structural. It is the inevitable meeting between who you were and who you are about to become. And when this oscillation reaches the mirror, questions arise that must be asked with courage. What part of me still believes it is not worthy of its own light? Which fears were turned into monsters just because they were never seen? Which piece of my history still clings to division as a way to survive? Look into the mirror. The psychological devil does not want your downfall. It wants your unification. Deep down, the journey is simple and profound. The more whole you become, the more life flows. And when life flows, abundance stops being a promise and becomes a consequence. But for that to happen, you must walk through the door where light and shadow finally recognize themselves as parts of the same being. Now the scene moves inside a human chest, enlarged like a living cathedral. Each heartbeat makes the space around it ripple with light, as if the heart were an inner sun radiating invisible frequencies. Luminous lines expand in concentric circles, crossing walls, touching memories, reaching realities that have not manifested yet. In this moment, a truth becomes clear. It is not the intellect that moves the world. It is the emotional field that pulses from the center of the chest. When this field falls out of harmony, everything around you loses color, rhythm, and clarity. But when it comes into alignment, doors that once seemed impossible open, as if they had been waiting for that exact state of vibration. Erwin Schrödinger's vision of consciousness illuminates this mystery when he affirms that consciousness is an indivisible unity and that the separation between subject and object is only appearance. If everything is one, then what we feel is not confined to the body. It resonates in the very fabric of reality. The heart becomes a point of convergence between inside and outside, between emotional vibration and the structure of experience. This is not just a metaphor, it is energetic coherence. Feeling is not only reaction, it is emission. It does not just describe the world, it organizes it. Viktor Frankl, through his psychology of meaning, states that the human being orients their life according to what lives in their deepest emotional core. For Frankl, the direction of life is not born from repeated thoughts, but from the inner vibration that gives meaning to everything. An emotional state is not just a mood. It is a lens that, once changed, changes everything you see. And when an emotion crystallizes, such as fear, guilt, or scarcity, it starts filtering every decision, every impulse, every possibility. Frankl shows that we can transcend any conditioning once we reconnect with the center that gives meaning. And that center pulses exactly where the heart field expands. The Hermetic law of vibration reveals the hidden mechanism behind this phenomenon. Nothing is still. Everything vibrates. And what vibrates in the heart becomes the matrix of the reality you experience. The Kybalion affirms, nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Thought can oscillate thousands of times in a day. Feeling, however, maintains the stable frequency that the universe returns to you in the form of circumstances. A positive thought placed over a deep feeling of fear is like blowing air against a strong underwater current. The current wins every time. Now imagine waves of different colors radiating from your chest. Fear vibrates in dark, dense, heavy tones. Trust vibrates in wide, golden tones that open space. Loose thoughts are like sparks. They flash and vanish. Feelings are like fields. They persist, organize, and shape. The mind changes its mind quickly. The heart maintains the broadcast. This is why thousands of positive thoughts cannot override a single negative feeling that is deeply installed. Emotional vibration is the true dial of manifestation. Picture an old radio in your hands. As you turn the dial, you look for a station. That is thought. But only when the tuning stabilizes does the music come through without noise. That is feeling. Feeling keeps the station. Feeling sustains the experience. In the same way, You can think about abundance, repeat affirmations, visualize your desires. But if the inner feeling still vibrates scarcity, the reality tuned in will always be the static of the old pattern. Ask yourself, what is my real emotional station? Not the one I say I have, but the one that vibrates silently when I am alone. What is my heart broadcasting when no one is watching? Is there fear hidden beneath my affirmations? Is there guilt disguised as responsibility? Is there scarcity dressed up as prudence? Vibration does not lie. It only reveals. And when this truth is seen without running away, something opens. Because perceiving your own vibration is the first act of freedom. It is exactly in this instant that the heart field begins to reorganize reality around you, like a magnet that finally remembers the direction of its power. Imagine an ancient alchemical laboratory where transparent flasks hold emotions in the form of liquid light. On a stone table, 3 containers glow, one with the heavy lead of fear, another with the cold density of guilt, another with the roughness of scarcity. Beside them, an alchemical furnace pulses like a heart, slowly heating each substance to reveal its true nature. Here, an ancestral principle becomes clear. No emotion is your enemy. Each one is raw material, waiting to be transmuted. Scarcity, when warmed by consciousness, turns into perception. When illuminated by acceptance, it becomes courage. When worked with direction, it turns into inner gold. James Hillman opens an important door by reminding us that our emotions are not just passing states, but psychic entities that want to be recognized and transformed. He says the psyche expresses itself through images, and that each emotion is an inner figure asking for dialogue, not expulsion. Repressing fear does not weaken it. It pushes it underground. Welcoming it, naming it, and offering it to the inner forge, however, reorganizes it. Alchemy begins exactly here, when we stop fighting what we feel and start transforming the feeling itself. David Bohm's physics offers the cosmic mirror of this process. For Bohm, reality operates on 2 levels: the implicate order, where everything is potential, and the explicate order, where everything is manifested. Dense emotions belong to the implicate level. They are patterns that long to be updated, given form, and understood. When you change your inner state, you change how this potential unfolds in the real. It is not magic, it is coherence between levels. Emotional transmutation is the bridge between invisible and visible, between what you feel and what life returns. The Hermetic law of mental transmutation, described in the Kybalion, reveals the primordial technique behind this. As the text says, the mind, as well as metals and elements, may be transmuted from state to state. This means no feeling is fixed. All of them are mutable. Fear can be raised into conscious prudence. Guilt can be raised into responsibility. Scarcity can be raised into presence. Emotion does not need to be fought. It just needs to be moved to a higher degree. To do this, the first step is to name what you feel. Putting words on the emotion brings light to what lives underground. The second step is to accept its presence without judgment, like someone recognizing an old visitor. The third step is to give that emotion a channel of expression: breathing, writing, movement, ritual, prayer. Anything that allows the field to release what was trapped. The fourth step is to gradually replace your inner and outer environment with stimuli that are coherent with the vibration you desire. Silence instead of noise, presence instead of anxiety, truth instead of comparison. Now visualize an emotional staircase. At the bottom is apathy. Above it, sadness. Above that, anger. Above that, courage. Then, trust. Each step is a transmutation, not a leap. No one goes from despair to joy in a single move, but everyone can climb one step at a time. When you honor this process, you create a new base field, a vibration that will sustain your future reality. Also picture the inner forge, fear being heated by the fire of awareness until it becomes malleable. In that state, you shape the emotion like a blacksmith shapes metal. Suddenly, what used to crush you reveals its usefulness. Anger becomes drive. Fear becomes wise caution. Scarcity becomes discernment. Nothing is discarded. Everything is transformed. Then come the questions that every seeker must ask in front of their own forge. Which emotion have I been carrying as lead when it could already be gold? What inside me is still afraid to feel? Which part of my emotional field has been asking for transmutation while I keep ignoring it? Alchemy always answers in the same way. Everything you accept is lifted. Everything you repress returns. Everything you transmute becomes power. Now imagine a translucent dome of light suspended in the middle of a vibrant desert. Inside it, the air is calm, ordered, pulsing. Outside, storms of words, news, pressure, and noise try to cross the luminous membrane but dissolve on contact, like dust that cannot find a way in. This is how your emotional field should work. A living temple where only what sustains your highest vibration is allowed to enter. And yet, many people leave the door wide open to overload, criticism, and the emotional scarcity of others, and then wonder why their steps toward abundance feel so heavy. Shielding your field is not isolation. It is energetic wisdom. Jungian psychology reminds us that we carry not only personal emotions but also collective fields. Egregores of fear, shame, and guilt easily slip in when we are vulnerable. Jung points out that the collective unconscious can amplify inner states, making them feel bigger than they really are. This is why tending your emotional field is also tending the permeability between you and the world. In this sense, money does not respond only to rational decisions. It responds to the psychic state you feed every day, consciously or unconsciously. Max Planck's vision deepens this understanding when he states that consciousness is the foundation of matter. If consciousness shapes what reality manifests, then the emotional field, which is consciousness in motion, directly influences how financial, professional, and relational experiences form. Abundance is not only a number, it is vibrational coherence. Money flows where there is inner structure to receive it, and retracts where it finds a fragmented emotional field. Planck is not talking about pop metaphysics, but about principle. What you are, in essence, comes before what you have. The Hermetic law of correspondence silently governs this dynamic. As within, so without. As without, so within. The outer world does not create your inner state. It reflects it. If inside there is fear of losing, outside you will find experiences that confirm that fear. If inside there is shame about receiving, outside the flow stops. If inside there is a sense of worthiness, outside life responds with unexpected paths. Money does not solve emotional patterns. It only amplifies what already exists. Now visualize an inner safe made of golden light. Inside it, you keep your highest vibration, trust, clarity, presence. Every time you allow heavy conversations, chaotic environments, or scarcity narratives to enter without any filter, the safe opens and the field gets contaminated. But when you choose, with sacred responsibility, what you allow in, Your field strengthens itself like a living shield. Successful people do this intuitively, not out of arrogance, but out of energetic maintenance. See your emotional field as a garden as well. If you do not water it, the soil dries up. If you let the weeds of guilt and comparison grow, beauty disappears. If you expose the soil to the emotional storms of any environment, roots break. But when you care for it daily, with silence, breathing, conscious gratitude, and presence in the body, the garden blooms even in places where others barely survive. Shielding is not a wall. It is cultivation. This is where money comes in as a mirror. Observe. How do you feel when you receive? Do you feel guilt? Fear? Do you feel the need to justify yourself? How do you react when you spend? With shame? With tension? With attachment? These feelings are not about money. They are about identity. Money only reveals the background vibration. Shielding the field means creating an inner environment where the feeling of deserving and flowing becomes natural, not forced. Then the questions rise, shaping the financial destiny of any seeker. What kind of energy do I allow to circulate in my field? What conversations do I let in? Which environments do I keep going to, even knowing they drain my vibration? What feeling do I cultivate as my base, scarcity or expansion? Because, in the end, it is not money that creates abundance. It is the emotional state you keep as sacred inside your own heart. An inner eclipse takes place. Light and shadow meet in the center of the chest, dissolving the old war and revealing that the hidden adversary was never an enemy. It was a part of you asking for integration. The whole journey unfolds before your eyes. The shadow that tries to protect the old self, the inner division that creates sabotage, the emotional field that dictates the quality of your reality, the alchemy that turns fear into strength, and finally, the sacred shielding that protects the vibration that sustains abundance. Everything converges into a single hermetic truth. Feeling is the creative force, the code that writes your experience, the filter that shapes your destiny. When you take ownership of your emotional alchemy, the shadow stops pulling you back and starts walking by your side as integrated power. The universe responds to the vibration you cultivate in silence. Life does not bow to scattered thoughts, but to the stable emotional state you feed every day, the one that vibrates even when no one sees. Ask yourself with radical honesty, which feeling have I been feeding without noticing? That feeling is your inner code, your base frequency, your energetic signature. It is what organizes your opportunities, your relationships, your money, your decisions. Nothing changes from the outside in, while the emotional field keeps the old design. But when the feeling changes, everything, absolutely everything, follows that movement. That is why this video is only a portal. If it found you, it is because a new phase is close. But crossing over requires more than information. It requires practice, direction, method, field. So, if this knowledge touched your consciousness, honor this opening. Like this video to seal internally your decision to elevate your vibration. Subscribe to the channel to remain inside an egregora that sustains this kind of awakening. Become a member if you feel called to deeper studies and guided rituals of emotional integration. Every action you take strengthens the field and teaches the algorithm and the universe to keep opening doors on your path. There are also outer keys that amplify your inner process. Share this video with someone who needs this initiatory reminder. Every act of generosity expands your own abundance field. If you feel it is time to deepen the practice of prosperity as a consciousness ritual, The ebook, The Key to Prosperity, is in the pinned comment. Its price is symbolic compared to the transformation it can trigger. The journey does not end here. The next video deepens the movement that has begun inside you now, as a natural continuation of this awakening. When you are ready, just step through. Until the next initiatory encounter, on the path of Hermetic wisdom,